6:30, we'll get started.
Give them a moment to start the.
Okay. All right, 6:30, get started with the planning commission here and with the roll call, please.
Brian Cirkvenick.
Peggy Smith.
And I think, Margaret, are you online?
Okay, there we go.
All
They
right,
let me in. Margaret Bowles.
okay, and then Andy Miller. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. A motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the September 24th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so open forum. Anybody in the audience, if you come to the lectern and have we'll start 3 minutes and hopefully discussion of anything other than agenda items, of course.
Yeah, hi, this is Clark Lipscomb. I want to raise a real concern of an executive session that the Planning Commission held, where you discussed subjects that are not allowed in executive session. And I'm curious who advised that and would like to know who advised that. You can't discuss public policy in executive session under Colorado law. Peggy, you were in the executive session. I think Andy, you might have been here. Garrett was definitely there. Brian was here. The other planning commission members there. So what y'all did was illegal. And I think our community deserves more than that. So who's advising the planning commission on matters of that nature?
So Clark, it's not our policy to answer questions during
Okay.
other business. We'll take this up with the town staff.
Well, I would like you to take it up with the town staff and the town lawyer. There are only certain things that can be discussed in an executive session. Your staff, since this is all they do, should very well know that. Your town manager, I think, was in that meeting as well. And your town manager should be well aware of what is allowed in executive session. And Kent Whitmer, your lawyer, was in that meeting. So, but I believe what was discussed was public policy, and that is absolutely illegal to discuss in executive session. Public policy is supposed to be discussed with the community and provide community input. And if this town and this town board, this current mayor is looking to shut down community input and just go do whatever the town wants, I don't think that's going to work very well for our community.
Okay.
So I'm very disappointed in what happened. I'd like somebody to investigate why and how it happened. And on what basis, was that authorized? Like who, I mean, Garrett does the agendas for planning commission. I'm assuming Michael Brack, your manager, approves them.
No,
Okay, so Garrett does,
but we were advised by our town attorney just to provide a general explanation. We were advised by our town attorney to have that session.
but again, I mean, reading the law, it's very clear that public policy discussions are to be held in public. So it's a public forum. You work for the public. You don't work for yourself. It's a public procedure and a public process that we have. So let's please be open about it. And I would like an investigation held. And did your lawyer advise you to have that meeting? And if he did, I'm very concerned about your lawyer and his knowledge of state law. So I'd like to understand under what state law that you're allowed to have that executive session in Kent Whitmer's mind.
Okay, Clark,
Okay.
you made your point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. But would you please look into that? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public? If you give your name and where you live, please.
Ryan Sharp, my wife Alicia. We live in Winter Park. We lost our home in Hurricane Ian in 2022. I have severe asthma and allergies, and that's why people say, well, why'd you move halfway across the country? Moved here because of the weather. I certainly didn't move here to ski. I don't feel like this mic's on, but anyway, can't afford to ski. Can't afford to mountain bike, and I'm not in good enough health to do either one. The only recreation that I enjoy because I played competitively at one time is pickleball. And I met with the board over at the rec center, and they basically it was a lot of meetings for nothing. The rec center is a country club for the wealthy, and the truly poor cannot afford it. And my problem with it is they're taking our tax dollars to pay for it. If it was all privately funded, I'd have no problem with it. Now, the reason I'm here at the Planning Commission is because I worked on an affordable housing board for 6 years in Florida, and I saw the same thing happen there that's happening here. The truly poor, and when I say truly poor, I'm talking people that make $15,000 or less in a year, they're not served by so-called affordable housing. There's no such thing as affordable housing, because what's affordable to me is not affordable to you, and vice versa. And I don't want my tax dollars going towards this monstrosity building that's going to be built, and it's only going to enable people to raise rents on the poor people like my wife and I, because they're serving $86,000 to $120,000 annual fee residents. That's not affordable. That's not helping the truly needy. I like Clark, and I think he should be able to build. We need other business restaurants. We need competition in this town because the price of eating is way too high because we don't have anything. I'm all for development. Again, it'll drive down the cost of living for everybody. But what I'm not for is my tax dollars paying for the development. I do not, affordable housing doesn't exist. The government can define it however they want, but all it is it's illegal racketeering. It's taking money from people that are not going to get any benefit out of it and giving it to the wealthy. And I'm sorry, but that housing is for the wealthy. Whether it be the YMCA of the Rockies, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be anything else that's so-called nonprofit in this town, if there's a fee involved that is absolutely ridiculous, that's a country club for the wealthy. That doesn't benefit me. My tax dollars should not go towards it, and I will do everything I can to make it public and fight it.
Thank you, sir. Any other input from the public and other business tonight? Anybody online? Okay.
Parnell had his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Parnell's online, okay. And could the clock that's in the timer clock in the corner, could we get that? So I can, yeah, monitor the 3-minute limit. And then let Parnell in if we would.
Hi, this is Parnell Quinn Frazier.
Gonna lose them.
Guys, okay, start my time. Anyway, August 27th, that meeting, part of that was on the public website still. It was online, we could see it. You guys went into executive session for legal advice about some kind of zoning. It was clear that you guys were talking about a certain project. And
There we go.
There we go. I think we got you, Parnell.
did you not hear the beginning of this?
No, we're just not
No,
hearing.
sorry.
Okay.
We're just hearing you now.
Can you start my time over then?
Yeah.
Okay,
You bet.
thanks. So Parnell Quinn Frazier, I want to go on the record about the planning commission's executive session on August 27th, 2025 on the proposed zoning change and what has led to a request for a vote by the town board in an emergency moratorium without any public meetings. During that meeting, part of the meeting was left online, so we were able to see what you guys were talking about, even though it was supposed to be a closed meeting. During that meeting, you guys talked about a specific project and how to stop that project. This is what Clark was talking about. So I'm just trying to paraphrase what I had because he brought up a bunch of it. So the questions for the mayor, Brian Cervenik, Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Smith, and Kent Whitmer When you went into executive session, you cited the executive session was stated to be for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6-4024B regarding potential changes to zoning regulations and the legal availability, application, and implementation of new regulation. Was the session limited only to the town attorney giving legal advice, or did members talk about whether to impose the emergency moratorium to stop the development? Did any member give direction to staff or discuss strategy for stopping the submitted development while you were in that closed meeting? If the town attorney told you about the legal risk of an emergency moratorium, why was that not shared with the public in open session before a vote for an emergency before a vote for an emergency moratorium was added to the prior board meeting to freeze private property rights? If you discuss zoning policy instead of pure legal advice, that's a violation of the state law, and the recording of that executive session could be ordered to be released by a judge. I'm asking you to do the right thing and release it voluntarily. Will you release the recording voluntarily? Because if you don't, and you cause individual harm, they have the right to sue you under a Takings Act, which doesn't cost you board members anything, but it costs us taxpayers a lot of money for your mistakes. So I'm going to ask you again, Brian, Mayor Cervenik, will you voluntarily let people listen to what happened during that meeting?
This isn't my meeting, Parnell, and this is also open forum, so I'm not going to respond. I'm going to have the town investigated, just like we said.
Andy Miller, would you release it voluntarily?
Parnell,
As this
we
is your
won't
meeting.
respond, and you've got 8 seconds left. Thank you.
All right, I'm just waiting to see if you're willing to do it or not. Peggy, are you willing to release it
I'm sorry,
voluntarily?
Parnell, your 3 minutes is up. Thank you very much for your input. Okay. Anybody else online? Okay, thank you. So we have, first item is discussion and possible action of Proposition 123 fast track review requirements. And staff report.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I'll just get my presentation going here. So this agenda item is simply a discussion of a required fast track review process that the town must implement for affordable housing projects in order to comply with the provisions of Proposition 123. So in speaking to kind of the background and need of this discussion, in 2022, Colorado voters passed Prop 123, which established the state's Affordable Housing Fund. The Affordable Housing Fund is a totally voluntary funding program that municipalities, counties, local governments opt into in order to potentially receive funding from Prop 123. In 2023, the town of Fraser did opt into Prop 123, and that opting in essentially meant that we committed to increase the affordable housing stock in Fraser by a fairly modest 9% over a 3-year period. So for projects in Fraser to continue to be eligible, I should say, to receive funding from Proposition 123 beyond this initial 3-year commitment period, beyond 2026, the state laws around Prop 123 require that the town implement an expedited review process for land use applications that incorporate affordable housing. So in speaking to what the minimum requirements of this expedited or fast track review process look like, the main thing is that a final decision on the application is rendered within 90 calendar days of a complete submittal of that application. Eligible projects are those that include at least 50% or more of the units within the development as deed restricted affordable units. And Prop 123 defines, for the purposes of fast track, those affordable units being at a 60% AMI for rental units or 100% AMI for sale units. I do want to note that Fraser has the option to go beyond these minimum requirements by either requiring a lower ratio of affordable units in the development such that less than 50% of the total units are affordable, or by considering deed restricted units at greater AMIs to also trigger this fast track provision.
So here we have some of those ratios already, don't we? Or
We do, and I'll speak to that in a moment
Okay.
on the next slide. Before I go to that, I do also just want to note that this fast track review process, even once we implement it, it's completely optional. The applicant or developer doesn't have to pursue this fast track process if they don't want to. Um, so to Chair Miller's point, we do have a few different policies adopted this year that relate to incentives for affordable housing developments that trigger based on varying criteria. So starting with the first two rows, these are fee-related incentives that either waive, reimburse, or defer various fees and payments associated with land use applications. The next two rows focus on zoning incentives that were adopted by the board earlier this year. This built off our density bonuses that were present in the Riverwalk and St. Louis Landing overlay zones. It tweaked them a bit. It added a new height bonus provision. And these are the criteria to meet those in these two rows. So you can see that the fast track review process aligns with our current fee incentives trigger when you have 50% or more affordable units. That's the same as fast track, but our zoning incentives trigger at a lower ratio, 20 or 30%. The other thing I wanted to note is that AMIs that the town has adopted for our fee and zoning incentive policies are greater than the minimum AMIs required for fast track review. These AMI figures are in alignment with DOLA's definition of affordable housing in a rural resort county, which Grand County is classified as. Essentially, this provision allows higher AMIs to be considered affordable units. So in implementing a fast track review, Fraser has the ability to match the criteria for fast track to be at a higher AMI similar to the other policies. Any questions about this from the commission?
So what would be the AMIs that we could have, what we've got right now, or?
Yeah, so this 60% and 100% are a floor. We could choose to allow higher AMIs to trigger a fast track review, if that makes sense. So a developer doesn't, if we want to just go with what is required by the state, it would be, for example, 60% AMI on rental units in the development. We could choose to adopt a policy that says, as long as the AMIs are 100%, you can go through this fast track review process. And that greater AMI is a easier hurdle to clear on the developer's end, right? So,
Well, yes, I think 60% would probably be impossible up here.
100%, 60%. Why can't you?
How many units do you have? They're not all at 60%.
so I spoke to this a little bit, but there are some potential options in how we could implement this fast track review. Again, we could implement it with the state's minimum requirements, 50% or greater ratio of units at the AMI specified. We could choose to adopt this fast track review process such that it matches our current lowest incentive threshold, which, if I back up to the previous slide, would be the third row, the zoning incentives, which is triggered at only a 20% ratio of deed restricted out of market rate units in the project. Or a potential third option would be aligning all of these incentives together to have the same criteria such that, you know, if you meet the fast track review criteria, you're also getting the fee incentives and you're getting the zoning incentives. So we could achieve this by some combination of lowering the affordable unit ratio for the fee incentive down from 50%, increasing that ratio for the zoning incentives up from 20 and 30%, or doing some combination of the two and meeting them somewhere in the middle. Any thoughts on a potential strategy or questions?
What do you think is more seamless?
Yeah, I think, you know, in speaking with other staff, I think trying to make these incentives as attractive as possible is certainly the goal of staff. I think there is some discussion around, well, the fee incentives don't really move the needle a whole lot in the scale of a project. You know, talking about things like building permit fees and use tax could move the needle, but our site plan and subdivision fees are quite low. You know, I think really that the biggest impact to a developer is likely some of these zoning incentives that allow for greater density and building height, lower open space, lower parking, et cetera. And as I'll speak to later, I think really the fast track review is likely not a huge incentive on the part of the developer. Certainly would welcome the feedback of Mr. Lipscomb that we have here in the room. But as I'll show later, you know, our review process is already, as codified, I would argue is already fairly quick. You know, I have a summary of a few projects. I'll just maybe highlight over to that. For kind of more recent major projects that all from the determination of completeness to final approval by the board landed within the 90 to 120 day range. So none of these came in within 90 days, which is a requirement of the fast track review. But this gives the commission and the public a good idea of how quickly staff is able to, you know, get these land use applications in front of the board for approval, generally in less than 4 months as it currently stands.
So the range is 90 to 100 days, or it's supposed to meet the 90-day?
So the requirement by the state is that you're supposed to meet within 90 days. I will note some maybe caveats or details with that. So again, it starts when the application is determined to be complete. Our code allows 5 business days from initial submittal to that determination of completeness. It's essentially staff ensuring that all the plans and documents, et cetera, are provided and that the application fees are paid. This 90-day clock runs continuously, and this also includes the time when the application is kind of in the developer's or applicant's court, you know, addressing review comments. So that 90-day period includes that time as well. However, the 90-day period does not include, you know, kind of post-approval steps, things that happen after an application goes to the board. This is, you know, obtaining signatures and recording final documents, things like that. So I'll also speak to a few extensions that are allowed within, you know, the minimum requirements of the law. Again, these are optional, but I think they are logical to adopt. The applicant can request extensions, a one-time 90-day extension for any reason, or, you know, extensions to comply with various one-off cases like complying with a state law or a court order, or to address comments from an outside approval authority that is not the local government. And additionally, the minimum requirements of Prop 123 also allow for the town to basically request or, you know, utilize an unlimited number of 30-day extensions. And this is to address, you know, additional review comments. You know, DOLA in their recommendations and best practices, you know, obviously recommends that governments look to minimize those 30-day extensions, but that is an option with this fast track review process. So if there are applications that do require additional rounds of review, this is supposed to catch that provision. The last thing I'll note is that this fast track review process only applies to certain application types, summarized in the box above. So most commonly, what the planning commission and board sees is a site plan. Very rarely or occasionally that site plan may also be submitted with something like a variance, a conditional use permit application that would be approved, simultaneously with that site plan. But this fast track review process does not apply to preliminary and final subdivision plats as well as rezoning. So even if those applications are, in support of an affordable housing project, they don't need to follow this fast track review process.
They're not eligible for the fast track.
Or at least it's not a requirement. I guess, the town could offer that. We could adopt language that says, yes, subdivision plats, for example, if it's in support of an affordable housing project, would follow that same fast track review process. And I think likely just in terms of, workflow, site plans and subdivision plats often, get reviewed and approved concurrently. So I think in the case where those two applications do come together, it makes sense to tie them together in their review process.
Condominiums, townhouses, so those are subdivisions, aren't they? Or but they are eligible for the fast track, or
Yes, they would. Again,
so subdivision of land, you're talking about plots.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I guess I would just emphasize it's simply not required that subdivision plats fall under this fast track review. I believe we could still consider them eligible if we wanted to. Margaret, go ahead.
Unmute. Yeah, for some reason I've gotten muted and it won't let me unmute myself. So I have to raise my hand. Is that normal when you're online?
Could you,
Yeah, I think that's normal.
Wendy, could you make sure she's a co-host? If she's not already.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask a quick question.
Sorry.
Yeah, we hear you,
so-
Margaret. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Garrett, so go back to those three options, and I think Peggy asked you what you thought was the most seamless, and I'm asking the same thing. Which do you think?
Yeah, I would say probably option 2 or option 3, again, with the goal that we want these incentives to be attractive and taken up by those, in the private development community. So going back to this table, I think if we aligned the fast track review with what are currently the lowest threshold to clear, which is that zoning incentives line right in the middle, then that means basically any project that receives that zoning incentive also gets fast track review. Now,
Okay.
I think there's an argument that could be made that, and I think this is ultimately subject to discussion and approval by the board, because it was the Board of Trustees that adopted the fee incentive policy. Should the ratio of affordable units needed to achieve that fee incentive policy, this 50% right here, maybe should the board consider, lowering that ratio such that it's an easier hurdle to clear, and therefore those fee incentives are more achievable and attractive to developers. But I would maybe argue that's a second step, a second discussion with our board.
I mean, I think, the public has told us that affordable housing is the number one thing that they care about. And so anyone who is willing to look at building affordable housing, we should fast track. So I would agree that zoning incentives, I think we start there, and
Okay.
we need more incentives so that more people build affordable housing.
Okay.
All right. Well, this that basically sums up my presentation. I appreciate the feedback from the commission.
So some feedback from the audience.
Hi, Clark Lipscomb for the record. I think a couple of things that we should all reflect upon is how many applications do you have today pending, Garrett, for anything in town?
Currently under review in the town's court, nothing. Pending applications total, it's closer, it's between 5 and 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have between 5 and 10 applications. And this fast track process by the town was predominantly driven by huge municipalities like Denver, et cetera, where there's a mass amount of applications and they're backlogged and they can't get through them. And they were trying to move affordable housing to the forefront. We don't have anybody trying to build affordable housing in the town right now. There with, you just said you don't have any, you're waiting on responses from the applications. I expect many of those are probably my applications. And so I don't quite see a need for fast track. Rather, I think what we need is to encourage developers or someone to build truly affordable housing, which I think the Mill Apartments is truly affordable. Excuse me. And I don't quite think this is the way to get there. And I don't think we have, I mean, granted, I will say, I think we have a review timing issue in town. And Garrett, with all due respect to you and Alan, we now have 2 planners. And I think we saw Baseline, a third-party consultant the town uses. I largely develop in PDD zone where all the studies were required to be done on the front end. But I can go back to really 2000, 2001 through, call it 2011, 12. And granted, we had an era of 2007 to really 11, 12 where nobody was doing anything. Like you can beg anybody to do anything. I was doing a few very small projects, but nobody was doing anything. But during that era, it was very typical for a project in both Rendezvous and Grand Park to go from PDD to final plat in 90 days. Okay. There was one town planner, it was Catherine. There was one town engineer, Jim Swanson. It was fast, efficient, it was collaborative, and the town wanted and needed, frankly, development, or it was going to die. Okay. The town had no money. Andy, you know this, you were here, and every meeting was, can we afford much of anything? Right. So, I fast forward today and I find it interesting that, we have a lot of money in the bank as a town now. And I credit, the developments of Rendezvous and Grand Park largely, and some of the business owners, the distillery, the Vicious Cycle, new stuff, and current business owners, frankly, deserve credit for, continuing their businesses and pushing to grow and enhance and improve our town. But we now find ourselves in a process that's mired down in reviews. And you all heard me at the last board meeting. Peggy was there on the Village at Grand Park, and we're in our 8th review response. I think we have 7 review responses, and we're on our 8th working to respond. And it had new comments from the engineers that, could have frankly relates to the Cousins ditch and the pipe, and that question could have been raised in the first set of plans. Also things that have been approved previously. So it really begs the question of, do we really need a fast track process? Or, and then also, I guess I would ask you guys, what do you think has broken that has taken our, what was a pretty smooth, well-defined process where the town wanted things to happen and actively worked and engaged with developers and investors. And by the way, maybe y'all are starting to find out how hard it is to raise capital for projects, but it's extremely hard to raise capital for projects, particularly in such a small town. And with the record and the history that everybody sees, it's very challenging. And you guys may not know that because you maybe haven't built something or had your own business, et cetera. But I know that our business community knows this. And I know that the development community that is still here knows this. I know my counterparts are ecstatic to not be doing stuff in Fraser anymore, my ex-partners, and to be where they're at. And so I think you really should be asking yourself, why has the process become so mired down? What's slowed it down? You have more staff. You have double the staff today that we had during the era when we did this stuff more promptly and efficiently. And nothing's changed. I mean, in fact, technology's gotten better and design work, I think, is far better. I'm dealing with water plans that the town built in 1999, 2000 with our funding for the green zone tank in the red zone pump station in Rendezvous. And they're hand drawn, and the town can't find a lot of them. I don't know what happened to the files, but the town literally designed and built that stuff, and then we paid for it. And then ultimately that's what led to us taking over the design and construction of the major water systems and sewer systems and things like that. And it's interesting to see the difference between those plans, which frankly aren't that old. I mean, it's only 24 years ago, to what we have today and the technology that we have today. It's only better. So I really think the core question with double the staff, what's the issue? And why can nobody, including people that are trying to do things that will benefit our housing inventory, get through the process timely? In other words, I don't think there's a need for a fast track. I think there's a need to focus inwardly at the town, in the management of the town and the staff in the town, and how they're being directed or guided to approve certain things or not approve certain things, or delay certain things or not get certain things done. Because I truly think that's the issue. I mean, I personally, with no plans, and no offense to Alan, I don't think we need 2 planners, right? I mean, I don't know what's going on in town that's so like mounting that we need, all this extra staff, but we should have a more expedited process with doubling of staff and still consultants on the standby that can take stuff on. So I don't know if Garrett wants to address that, and maybe he can explain why the process has gotten so slowed down.
So Clark, this is really outside the agenda item.
No, it's about the
So,
fast track.
I know, well.
Okay, but I mean, and Andy,
Stretch.
yeah, with
Okay.
all due respect, let me just finish. I'm wrapping up.
Okay,
The
thank you.
the fast track is literally put forth by the state.
Right,
And under this fast track program, you should, with your staff and the lack of plans coming into this town, you should be doing every plan. That should be a goal, to achieve every plan review and every process in that time frame.
yeah,
And that's it. I mean, that
Yeah.
it shouldn't be it shouldn't be an incentive. We need our town to develop, right? We need to encourage development. Okay, not discourage it by things taking years and years and years to get approved.
okay.
So let's not become, kind of an Aspen. I mean, I can tell you what happens when you do that, and this is directly related to this discussion, Andy, is cost and prices of everything go up. And I lived in a community for 12 years where I watched it happen. You delay, stall. Housing inventory gets worse. Prices go up because the demand doesn't weigh, and it's counter to helping our housing inventory issue, because that's really what's driving our affordability issue. And I agree with the gentleman that spoke earlier that we have a serious affordability issue. None of these things that are being floated are going to help address that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clark. Sure.
I'll give you a little more history. I served for 6
Just
years.
help us with your name one more time for the
Brian
record and the
Sharp.
recording, yeah.
I served for 6 years on an affordable housing board and did interior design for 20 years in Florida, commercial primarily. And there's always the same obstacles to affordability. And I'm going to step on everybody's toes here, probably even Clark's. But the Builders Association has an illegal racketeering going on with most counties because they purposely build things that fail. They put in things that do not need to be there. My job on the board was to drive down the cost per square foot. I got it down to where I could have built an affordable housing, and I actually worked with an architect to develop affordable housing based on surveys that I did personally. The city fought me because I found that the median income of the town I lived in, which was Punta Gorda, was not over 50,000. It was actually about 26,000. And the city had purposely messed with the numbers so that they could, increase that level of income that you had to have affordable housing. And I watched as the 6 years went, as realtors and builders were added to that board. All of a sudden, I was pushed out because the builders hated me because I actually wanted to produce affordable housing. I was not allowed to present what everybody I surveyed said they actually wanted in their backyard, which was, instead of a high, 4-story skyscraper, a block, if you will, they wanted a community of tiny homes. And the people, I mean, I went to Walmart, I went to the mall, and I surveyed people, and what I found is they're not opposed to apartments or affordable housing. What they're opposed to is the design that always seems to happen, which is these monstrosities of 4 to 6 level block buildings that look like crap. But if we would allow, if code here would do what they did in Punta Gorda, which was minimize the minimum square footage for a structure, we could have tiny homes, communities. It would actually boost the economy. It would be affordable just by its nature. The trend is, with the younger generations, they don't want big houses. They don't want these mansions. So it's coming whether we want it or not. What I would suggest is embrace the change, lower the square footage requirements for builders.
You've already done, sir. So,
Okay.
yeah, so look at a little closer at our codes and we
Well,
we
no-
need to kind of keep the agenda.
I just say real
But
quick,
yeah,
so
yeah.
ranch style, building ranch style in terms of affordability and affordable homes is actually a better way to go as well.
Okay,
Just something to add.
yeah, thank you so much, though. Any other input? Parnell has his hand up.
Yeah, Andy, Parnell Quinn again. The biggest issue I've seen with the developers that I talked to, and I talked about 15 to 20 every month that look at developing in Fraser, the incentives you guys are offering are minimal, as Garrett suggested. They don't really help with what people want to do, and it doesn't encourage people to build in the town of Fraser. But their number one reason they don't want to build in Fraser is the town of Fraser has a reputation for not keeping their word. You guys make deals with people, and if somebody missteps by a day, a week, or can't get their building permit approved, you try to find some other way to screw them out of more money or back charge them or injure their project more. So, you guys really need to clean up the act that you're doing right now and be what Brian said he was going to be and have a transparent town that holds the rules and the law. And remember that you guys are servants and not masters, and your job is to help us build a better community, not be in the way. And so far, you guys are getting in the way of what people want to do.
Okay,
You
thank
talk
you,
about
Parnell.
wanting more housing, and then you put up roadblocks to block housing. You talk about more
So Parnell,
commercial.
Parnell, I'm sorry, we have an agenda item that we're discussing.
Yeah, and
here.
I'm talking about your agenda item.
No, you're not.
I'm talking about your
You're
incentive
launching
package.
general attacks on the community and on
Nope.
this
I'm
board and
talking
on the town
about
board.
Andy, I am talking about why people do not want to build in the town of Fraser.
That's not on the agenda, sir.
It
This
is.
This is a fast track system that the state requires. We will move on to this, to discussion specifically of this only, please.
Yeah, I am
So,
talking
no,
to this
we're done-
specifically, Andy.
It's exactly what he's talking about. It's encouraging construction and
So,
development.
That's
Mark,
right.
you're-
That's what I'm talking about, is encouraging.
That's not on the
and
agenda.
development.
Okay, that's enough. All right, let's, we're gonna move on
That
here.
is the agenda.
Parnell, if you have something specific to say about the fast track process that's on the agenda, then say it. Otherwise, then we're done here. We got to move on. Thank you. Okay. So any other input from anybody else or anybody online? Okay, so any other discussion from the board? So Garrett, just to clarify,
Mhm.
this is, the state requires this, right?
It's required if we want projects, including those led by private developers, within the town of Fraser, to be eligible to receive any amount of funding from Proposition 123 from the State Affordable Housing Fund.
And we do
So-
receive state funding for the project that we're doing now.
The
So-
town with our development partner was successful in obtaining $12.9 million in funding through Prop 123.
Yeah.
And again, there are other grant programs that other communities in Grand County have utilized. Granby has gotten a similar award. I believe Kremling and Grand Lake have received what are called planning capacity grants to help them, set up review processes and code amendments that support affordable housing. But yes, this is required by the state in order for future projects to be eligible to receive this funding source from the state.
Something I would just add real quickly to Michael Brack, town manager, is that this is actually tailored more towards private development than it is public development. It is a new program. They are rolling it out, but the majority of their applicants are private developers. And I have spoken with one other private developer who has and is currently developing in Fraser, who is looking at this program as well. So as far as eligibility, it's not just to the private developers, but they want to ensure that the towns that are facilitating that development meet this criteria as well.
Okay. Any other discussion from the board? And so you said it was discussion and possible action. What were you hoping for tonight?
I think just general direction of the board of how to implement this as a code amendment. I think I do have good direction from you all.
Okay.
Tying and writing these fast track criteria to match our current lowest threshold, which is that zoning incentive in our code. So
Okay.
we'll likely bring this back as a code amendment in January.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, Margaret.
So our next agenda item is discussion of residential uses within the business zone district, and this is a discussion item. Staff report.
I'll be presenting on this one. Let me get the presentation up. Okay. Good evening, planning commissioners and chair. My name is Alan Sealiff, assistant town planner. Tonight I'll be presenting a discussion item on residential uses in the business district. So this item's being brought forward following some concerns being voiced regarding recent development proposals that mainly include residential uses in the business district. That as the town is currently underway updating our comprehensive plan. It's anticipated that the comprehensive plan is going to be addressing broader land use and zoning goals and discussion items, specifically related to mixed use development, small scale neighborhood serving retail, and development in general that expands the town's sales and lodging tax as a fiscal base. These are, concerns linked to the long-term economic vitality of the town. So we're bringing this forward as a discussion item, kind of ahead of some of the larger discussions with the comprehensive plan, targeting later next meeting in November, and then hopefully wrapped up by the end of the year. That will further just explore this this topic and others, and then staff can potentially bring forward a code amendment if directed to, starting in 2026. So currently, just kind of the reason why this is coming to a head is the business district allows a range of residential uses. Multifamily uses are allowed by right. Single family dwellings, attached and detached, are allowed with a conditional use permit. So different stage or different kind of allowances for what's allowed and what kind of approval processes. But there's currently no requirement for commercial uses to be included in new developments. Excuse me. So just to start off, a little review of the business district, the purpose statement, the intent of it, it's stated to that it is to provide a wide variety of highway, commercial, community retail, personal service, general office, and other business uses. It doesn't specifically mention residential uses. That, of course, could also be tweaked and amended in any sort of code amendment. Part of the packet materials tonight included 2 attachments. The second attachment included a kind of a survey of varying other adjacent communities. For purposes of formatting and whatnot, I didn't include the use purpose statements in this presentation, but those are included in that attachment too for reference, just as comparison items for some of these other communities and their non-residential commercial districts. Oh. So for the Fraser Business District, these are the residential uses only, in order following our use table, just the uses that are permitted. Some varying specific uses, but kind of the bulk of them would be multifamily, single family, live work units are included, other specific ones like assisted living and bed and breakfasts. So multifamily, again, multifamily and live and work are permitted outright, and then single families would require a conditional use permit. The conditional use permit would just be an additional level of scrutiny required for approval. It specifically requires approval by the Board of Trustees with additional criteria that would be evaluated. So here's our current zoning map provided for reference. We could always come back to this as well, but just want to have it in the slideshow here. All the areas in red are the areas currently zoned business. These include areas to the north of downtown, to the south of downtown, a mix of existing development from residential, commercial, kind of neither use, things like churches. There's vacant properties, there's a fire station, there's utility, water and sanitation utility ponds. So a variety of uses, but generally within proximity of Highway 40. As part of our kind of initial discussion here, we wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into what other communities, how other communities address the topic. So we looked at each municipality within Grand County as kind of a first level of comparison, and then some nearby mountain communities, focusing on Summit County and Steamboat Springs as applicable resort communities with adjacency to Fraser and Grand County, and then a few additional communities just on the west side of Denver Metro as kind of maybe a baseline or a neutral comparison for larger communities within the region. So attachment 1 that was included in the packet was all, I think it was 13 communities that we looked through and indicated what level of residential uses are allowed in various zone districts. These next slides are attempt to kind of summarize that a little bit more topically, but generally covers the same information. So this table consolidates all the zone districts that are included in these neighboring communities by zones that allow residential uses outright. So exactly like the Fraser Business District. These other ones, Grand Lake, Granby, Hot Sulphur Springs, I believe it's 8 total, and also include predominantly non-residential zone districts that do allow residential outright. And I'll note that a lot of these zone districts, just like the Fraser Business Zone District, allow some level of residential outright, and then maybe a different type that would require an additional approval. So some allow multifamily outright, and like the Fraser one, single family is more restricted, or vice versa. So you'll see some of these pop up in kind of both categories.
So Ellen, the ones that are blank don't allow residential in business, or?
I'm sorry, can you
So you
repeat that?
got Kremling doesn't have anything listed, so that Kremling does not allow residential in the business zone?
Right, they have they allow some residential, but they'll show up in our third category of ones that are allowed, but with a specific requirement
Gotcha.
as part of that. And
Okay.
that'll really be the bulk of this presentation. After these next couple of slides, we'll be going through what those additional requirements are as kind of points of comparisons, ideas, things that may be of interest or may not be appropriate.
Thanks, Alan.
So this next category, again, I'm saving the one that's kind of a little bit more in between. This will be the zone districts, examples of zone districts that prohibit all residential uses. When we categorize different zone districts, generally it was anything that was non-residential. So we looked at mixed use, commercial, and industrial. The ones that prohibit it outright are generally more industrial in nature. There are a few in here that are commercial. I believe Frisco has a couple of them that don't allow it. Yeah. and then Breckenridge has some, and then Arvada has one, but the rest of them, especially in Grand County, are just industrial zone districts that don't allow residential. And then this is the last grouping of zone districts. See, it's a kind of a more filled up table. A lot of these communities just have a larger variety of zone districts or a larger catalog of zone districts. So maybe they're a little bit more specialized on the ones that do and don't allow it, and then have various ones that are mixed use, like commercial, ones that are outright residential and commercial. That's why, reading these tables kind of in conjunction with the purpose statements and then the specific regulations helps tie it all together. So for the balance of the slides, I believe there's 4 or 5 here. I just pull excerpts from the zoning code of these different communities. So we can read the text from the code, kind of see how detailed some are and how some are more broad. So Grand Lake, for example, includes allowance for multifamily multifamily units, condos, townhouses. I believe that's the whole range of units besides single family detached homes. But the requirement is that they are required to have commercial space, dedicated commercial space within the first 50 feet of that building. So that would, by necessity, push the residential either behind or above the commercial space. Subpoints B and C here are that they appear to be crafted more to close any loopholes in design of that. So that letter B specifies if there's hallways, elevators, kind of service areas included in this area, then it requires commercial space on the second floor. And then that letter C just specifies phasing, that the commercial has to be built at the same time as residential. It can't be pushed to a later phase. Here's Kremling, that was just asked about previously. So in their non-residential zone districts, they have the requirement that any dwelling units cannot comprise more than 50% of that building. So that necessitates a majority of commercial, or at least, I guess, 50-50 at the maximum in terms of requiring commercial space. Winter Park has a provision in there. They have a downtown business overlay. So it only applies to properties within 75 feet of Highway 40, and it requires ground floor commercial. And then Breckenridge is one of the more nondescript requirements. It just states that commercial uses or residential uses that are included with commercial have to be secondary. So we read that as being accessory of some form. It can't be the predominant land use in a development. Dylan goes into quite a bit of detailed. I'll just pull out a couple of excerpts here. So they've got 2 different zone districts. Their core area retail zone requires any residential units to be above commercial uses, so on the second floor. And then their mixed use district allows a greater proportion of residential. I believe it's up to 80% can be residential, but it has to be developed in conjunction with some of these specific uses that they want to help activate that mixed use zone district. They also specify there's design specifications in here about location, so occupies the primary street frontage, any commercial uses. And then there's an exemption in the Dillon one that allows developments that are for workforce housing by agreements, that's executed agreements, so deed restrictions presumably, that those would be able to be built without a commercial component. Okay. Running through a few of these other ones, Frisco includes a bit of a different approach in that they specify specific streets within the applicable zone districts, that those street frontages have to have commercial uses. Silverthorne, similar to, I believe it was Breckenridge, just states that it has to be an accessory use, so not the majority of the land use. Steamboat Springs has slightly different provisions for some of their different non-residential zone districts, but one grouping requires commercial on pedestrian active building frontages, so presumably there's additional definitions in the code that would kind of define that and better direct that. And then in another grouping of commercial zone districts, there's a cap on the unit size of any residential uses and location regarding ground floor 50%. Finally, these are the last couple of communities here. Golden includes examples. They set a 25% threshold of total floor area that could be for residential use. So up to 75% could be residential, excuse me, and only 25 would have to be commercial. They also have a carve out in here about, 100% use being affordable units. So that another way that we can potentially tie it to some of the town's affordable housing incentives would be to allow it in areas that maybe just market rate affordable or market rate units wouldn't be. And then finally, the city of Wheat Ridge includes a lot of some of these similar ones in terms of majority commercial uses. They cap a density. They include a density cap at 1 unit per 5,000 square feet of lot area. And then any new residences can't be the principal use. So again, relying on that accessory use definition. So pretty wide survey here. Of course, there's, you look up any number of other communities, we may be able to find additional ideas or approaches to it. This was kind of the starting point. Again, we'll be kind of diving into the comprehensive plan in more detail in the upcoming meetings and then with the town board. So we want to have these discussions in mind. We can continue it in those meetings. And then ultimately in January, either if we have direction prior to then to have a specific code amendment or kind of tie it all back together at that point, we could come forward in February potentially at that point. So again, no action tonight, as much or as little discussion as warranted, but happy to answer any questions. And obviously we'll be following up with this in the coming weeks.
I have a couple questions. It's Margaret.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
Go back to the map which shows the business, with the red. So okay, so looking at the map, the St. Louis Landing property, why is that striped?
So that is the St. Louis Landing overlay district, I believe. It was applied prior to the approval of St. Louis Landing. So that was before the town had the Riverwalk district, I believe. So that was the tool utilized in order to help facilitate that specific development. So it's zoned business with St. Louis Landing overlay, but it's really kind of separate from the rest of the properties shown on the zoning map.
So, and another quick question, because, we have a home and it's actually in a business, it's actually in the business. So
Right.
in the business zone. So for those of us, if our house burned down, is it non-conforming then and we wouldn't be able to rebuild it?
Well, there's provisions in our code about non-conforming uses being allowed to continue. If it is a totally removed use and rebuilt, that may become an issue if there aren't specific provisions included in any code amendment that would allow maybe pre-existing uses. So that would be something that we would have to take kind of a finer grained approach to. But currently, currently that a single family home is a conditional use. So it's technically I believe would require a conditional use permit if you were going to have to rebuild it.
Who issues the conditional use permit?
Sorry?
Who issues the conditional?
That would
use
be the
permit?
town board. It goes into a process like a site plan. It would go to the planning commission for recommendation and then the town board for approval.
So it would be possible that it wouldn't be able to be rebuilt. Okay, another quick question. So when we did the Riverwalk overlay district, one of the reasons we changed that was because somebody wanted to build a single family residence and we added the commercial requirement in there for that. Why at that time didn't we look at at this issue at that time, if it was indeed a problem for us that we don't have enough commercially zoned business zoned property? Why wasn't it looked at that time? I'm just curious.
Not being with the town, I don't know if I could speak to that, Garrett, or maybe Michael, you have insight.
I can take a stab at that, sure. Part of the discussion of that was we were gaining some traction on interest and development interest there on Clayton Court, which was non-existent for a long time. That was a trailer park for the all the history leading up to now, to my knowledge. And with that development interest coming in and the acknowledgement of the value of the Fraser River Trail and the Fraser River Walk areas, it was identified just as an area to look at reconsideration of zoning, to really highlight those different areas and the potential for a commercial venue located in the downtown areas of Fraser, right along the Fraser River Trail, to be able to really just use that, I think, as an economic driver, and really to showcase and provide for the development that the community really wanted to see along the Fraser River, which there used to be, the Finnegans used to be down there, that restaurant right on the river, and has since, changed to residential. And it was, as things have been progressing and more development has been taking place in Fraser, that area was just kind of highlighted as a topic of discussion, and went through a workshop series just like this will go through, with community input, and to see what the town and the planning commission and town board ultimately want to do for those areas. So we went through that exercise for that, and really looking to preserve the sales tax of current and future properties there in Fraser, which is very similar to the discussion here for the business zoning. Does that make sense, Margaret?
Kind of.
Yeah, there were certainly a lot of master plan, the downtown study, the Lodo study. A lot of this focused in on that Riverwalk district, but as we focused in on that over the years, over these last few years, we really began to focus in on Old Town too, along the highway and the existing businesses there. I mean, and all of this is driven by a couple things. We're a tourist-based economy where sales tax is what keeps this town alive. I mean, we've got, what is it, 5 mil levy is our property tax?
5.866.
5.88, which is a minimal mill levy, to say the least, to try and keep a town alive. So it's always been the philosophy of the towns, and up here, all the years I've covered it for the newspapers and as a town board member, that we need to build infrastructure for tourists and for people that come here, and for the fact that we have literally thousands of beds that aren't very often occupied. We need to develop streets and keep that infrastructure without saddling the local residents with high mill levies and the expenses that can go along with trying to run this type of economy. So in some ways, we've overly depended on sales tax. I don't think we could ever up the sales tax again. It's we're at over 10% in Winter Park, and what's our total sales tax in Fraser? It's 9.
5.
Well, but the total sales tax, but the county and everybody.
9.2. I'm sorry, 9.2.
And the transit tax, 9.2.
1% for.
So anyway, it's a tough balancing act. And Clark commented earlier that we're doing better, and we are, but we're still challenged with the fact that over half our town income comes out of a single store, the Safeway, and it's difficult. And so we're trying to preserve the business uses and encourage business uses in the areas that have been zoned business. So these are thorny questions and tough ones, but I think that we're at least having these discussions and trying to see what next steps might be. So anything else from the board here? Or?
That's well said.
Margaret, just to follow up on your question about existing non-conforming uses, our code is currently written allows that at like a 9-month period. So just to use your own example, if your house burned down, don't wish that on you, obviously. But in that example, if your house was a total loss, I think so long as you applied for a site plan and received approval and got a building permit within 9 months, you would be in the clear. Anything beyond 9 months, our code states that if that non-conforming use is not active for that 9-month period, then any further development has to conform with the current regulations.
So that could be something that could be amended because it's unrealistic to expect you could design a house and get a building permit.
Yeah, we want to link
Right,
at
it-
that time.
so
That's the guy that
exactly.
Just about lost his house. in
Yeah.
his zone.
I lost
Yeah.
my house in Florida and it's already been a year since it went, and we're still not, building yet. So
Yeah.
that 9 months is unrealistic.
Yeah.
We should look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agreed, and I was going to bring that up. So thank you, Commissioner Smith and others. Yes.
Any other input from the board? Okay, and I really respectfully request that the input from the audience deal specifically with this question. So anybody from the audience?
Hi, it's Clark Lipscomb, again from Grand Park. And this is a broad question, Andy, so we're going to cover a lot of stuff. So please don't interrupt me. We won't get off topic on the broad subject of what is being discussed here. My first question, it's amazing that like when your staff asked, does anybody have questions or comments or ideas? Like I never hear anyone other than Margaret, good question, Margaret, ask questions. It's amazing to me. And it begs the questions, y'all understand what's going on or what we're doing or where we've been?
Clark, if you can make these things personal, then I will cut you off. And
Hey,
run this
you know
meeting,
what? The
okay?
beautiful thing of our country is dissent and disagreement.
There's
And
not,
it's
but
a real good question. Like
but
you're a planning
you
commission that's an advisory board.
Okay.
And if you
need
don't
to
have
keep
any
it-
advice to give, you shouldn't be on the planning commission. You made some comments. I appreciate that. So now let me make mine.
So.
And I'm sorry if you can't
but
handle
no,
the personal
no,
attack,
I'm
but I've
gonna
taken
interrupt
plenty
you
of
right
them.
at this point,
So-
Clark, and listen to me.
Okay,
for-
so my question is, what is
Sir,
the
if you
goal?
will not listen to me
What's
for
the
one,
goal?
sir,
What's,
Clark, I'm running this meeting. I'm the chairman, and I respectfully requesting you abide by our town civility ordinance, which does require that you not attack people personally, and you keep it non-personal. We keep it to the regulations. Then we can listen to you. We'll keep our ears open. You'll be able to make better points, but please keep it non-personal.
yeah,
Thank you.
I won't get into your civility code and the violations of that have happened here, but regardless, what is the goal? What's the goal of this?
Clark, the goal is to move the town forward. Right now, we get $750,000 a year in property taxes.
Which
That's-
is how much bigger than it was when you moved here?
It's considerably more.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
what are you spending on your metro district oversight? 5 mils. We're talking about 5.88. We have a police department. We plow the streets, water and sewer. I mean, so the only way that we can afford to service your development and Rendezvous is to increase sales tax revenue, because there's going to be a lot of roads to plow. There's going to be a lot of extra police. So we are running a business. We're dependent on sales tax.
Okay, so the goal is sales tax. Is that
Goal is
what I'm
sales
hearing?
tax.
The goal is to get sales tax. Okay, that's what I want to know, because I want to know what the emergency was.
There's no emergency. It's just the reality is we're sitting here of doing a comprehensive plan.
Okay,
And this becomes obvious when we're in the budget season, that we're looking at the budget and going, well, what as stewards of this community can we do and think forward 10 years down the road? Maybe everybody's going to order by Amazon. Hopefully not, but
well,
We need to
I've
be
actually had
prepared.
that as one of my points. But what I do know, the emergency that I've heard that we've had, and I appreciate that Peggy, as a board member, you recognize there's not an emergency, because you guys had an emergency ordinance on your agenda at last week's town board meeting. And so I agree, there's not an emergency. And if it's about sales tax and generating sales tax, I think there's lots of ways to try to focus on that haven't been done. And I have even a greater concern that's and I'm not going to get into it, but it is a significant concern of the Grand Park homeowners. I've been in a bunch of homeowner meetings lately about the lack of maintenance on our streets. And since Alan Nordine has left literally our streets in your neighborhood, Mayor, Cousins Meadow, have not been crack filled. And they are bad, really bad. And you know, you were the mayor. Alan had a road plan. It was detailed. I'm very, very concerned about where the focus is of the town and where the money is being spent. But I'll remind you that when I started here, the town had zero savings, zero. Okay, and you have, I think, $18 million in fund balances roughly today. So you're a far cry from where you were, Peggy. And that's because of developers like me and my ex-partner, and, you know, some other small business owners that have come in and done things, et cetera. And thankfully, you know, a robust tourist economy that keeps our Safeway ginning out the dollars, Andy. And I remember when City Market opened and oh my God, the sky was falling. I think you might have been on the board, Andy, when City
Something
Market
probably,
opened in
yeah.
Granby. Remember that?
Sure.
And-
And the sky was falling when Winter Park said they
Oh,
were going to develop a.
And then when
major
Winter Park
supermarket,
was
yeah.
doing exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I think the being a developer for 30 years now, and I grew up in a really small town, and that small town today is still 2,992 people, right? Still to this day, same, like, you know, somebody dies and their kids replace them, I guess. And that town economically has survived. It's done fine, but you can't force demand where it doesn't exist. And that's what you're trying to do. And so we have a housing crisis, and I think that's admitted. And I think this is largely driven by our last planning commission meeting where we brought forth a very well thought out plan for Meyer Lot 1. And I think Peggy, you said Clark's wiping off the commercial or something like that. No, what I'm trying to do is address our housing inventory issue. And that plan had 240 approximate units, residential units in it, and a little tiny piece of commercial in the front, I believe. And what I think is important to recognize is that area before, well, I bought it. I'm the one that changed the zoning. It was Forest Meadow Solar Subdivision. Andy, you know this. You were here when that was approved in the basically 79, 80 to 81. And it went defunct, but we bought the Forest Meadow Solar Subdivision from Walter Meyer. And we overlaid it with, we didn't overlay it. We basically changed the zoning wholesale from that, what was a kind of a PD plan, I'll call it, to the B zone. And we did that because of the flexibility. And at the time, the town was very focused on more big box, and they wanted Walmart, they wanted Home Depot, right? They wanted basically, if we could emulate Safeway 2 times over or even bigger, oh my gosh, think about how much money we would have as a town, and it would be great. So that's why we went through that rezoning, but that rezoning also had the flexibility for residential, and that was studied by us because we're like, what if that demand doesn't exist? What if we can't get those big box guys, right? So roughly 22 years has passed since we bought that land. And guess what? Walmart's closing stores today. Home Depot's closing stores today. They ain't coming. And we've wiped that off our plan, and rather we would like to focus on housing. And here's what I've learned by operating a few retail businesses here and you know, stuff, but I'm gonna have to consider some more, is employees. They have nowhere to live. Okay, so none of you guys, well, one of you operates a business, but a lot of your employees now live in Denver, right? And you reverse your system. You don't have drivers in Denver parked anymore?
0.
Okay, I thought you did the reverse thing where you had them down there and they were driving up here and going back and forth. So anyway, good on you for employing local people.
And that's what I've been doing for the
Mayor
last 30
Circovenic,
years
but
also, Clark.
what's
So
that?
I've been employing 7 to 10 people every year. for the
And
last
that's
30
awesome. But
years,
I mean,
so.
my point is,
Yeah.
Andy,
I know.
as business,
It's the
you are
gentleman.
a contractor. I thought
Yeah.
you had retired and not doing that anymore. But the point is, one of the hardest things that every employer faces here is a stable, reliable, solid workforce.
Sure.
And moreover, having customers other than, you know, there's 6 great weeks a year. Okay. And I'm happy to share charts and show you those 6 great weeks. I know you know those 6 weeks. You probably live off of them the same as I do. And then there's 6 months that are okay. And then there's 4.5 months that are really not great, guys.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a misconception and a farce, frankly, to think you can force commercial development, particularly with the cost of construction, of building nice new places and places that demand, and then to fill them. Okay, so let's fast forward today. We have Arrow and Winter Park. It's been sitting empty now for 6 years. Okay, they have one lease signed for a very small space. I know the guy. I wish him great luck. But 6 years it's been sitting there. Now think about the boom that Winter Park went through, and that space is still sitting empty. Why?
When did
Cooper-
they finish, Clark, did they finish that 6 years ago?
No.
No, it's
No,
been
the
in
building
process.
shell has been finished
Yeah.
and it's been sitting. The commercial on the first floor
Yeah.
has been sitting for 6 years. And it was driven by that commercial on the first floor. If you talk to Brian Novak, he wanted to change that to residential, which frankly they could use for the strip center across the street. But Winter Park's code prompted the, front 70 feet of Highway 40 has to be commercial. He went, I think, 2 or 3 times to them and asked them to change it. Or to give him a variance, because he had this big residential demand. He sold the condos on the upper level and paid for the space below, but meanwhile it sat empty. And it literally it's been years. We have Market Street, and we don't need to belabor the fact that, it is like it is, but it's getting finished. It's 40,000 square feet of shell. I have 0 leases, 0. Okay. Now, the other thing is we could put uses in there that don't generate any sales tax. Okay, that doesn't really do anything to help the town in terms of what your goal is, Peggy. And I appreciate the collaborative discussion, because I think that's what we need more of. And so I guess the point I'm saying is, do we really have the demand for commercial? Right? I mean, between Arrow and Market
Do
Street,
not have the demand right now, but I expect when you get built out, there's going to be a lot of demand. If it's nothing else than just restaurants.
So just throwing an idea out, Clark.
Mhm.
Is it possible in a building to do your first floor that could be commercial in the future and use it as residential until that demand happens? So you design with high ceilings, a possibility of your first floor becoming commercial when the demand happens.
yes, it is. It's expensive.
Mhm.
And like, it depends too on how you do the heat and air. I mean, you're talking about gutting a residential unit. Residential's probably way more expensive to finish out than commercial when you're
Sure,
talking about big
bathrooms and
spaces.
kitchens and, yeah.
And you're not going to gut it. I mean, what I have seen, and we have some of them in our current plan for Meyer Lot 1, is I call them man caves, but really they were industrial live work. And that is commercial on the first floor, theoretically, if let's say an electrician bought it and was using it as their warehouse, but they had 12-foot high garage doors. And that would be an easy one to actually repurpose later as residential if that demand there. I think you're more likely. I actually had somebody trying to buy my garages on behind the brewery. I don't know what alley am I on there, Garrett, but basically the building that Catherine lives in. That's the duplex. And I own 2 of the garages that were Paul Jones that are right behind the brewery, and they wanted to convert them to residential. So I think there's more of a residential demand and need today. People are just looking for a space. I mean, I had a girl that moved into, she was actually a really good friend. She was living in a garage in Fraser and moved into one of our apartments above the ski broker.
So, but you see our dilemma, and it's your dilemma too, Clark. I
It
mean,
is chicken and
So,
egg.
once we lose these business parcels to purely residential, then there's no bringing them back.
Well, but I mean, I think
So-
this is where the analysis is kind of flawed.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to Alan and your staff, you're studying towns that have no relevancy or comparison to Fraser. Okay, you're studying towns that have full-time populations year round, that the businesses don't have the cycles that we have. And I highly doubt we'll ever be in a situation where we have no off seasons. Okay, just given where we're at. Okay, and I
Summit
guarantee.
County has some parallels, don't you believe? Or
Well, very little. And here's the difference of Summit County and Steamboat. I have a home in Steamboat.
Sure.
And I've spent a lot of time in Steamboat. I have a lot of friends in Steamboat now, and I know a lot of the business owners in Steamboat. Steamboat has a 15,000 person year-round population.
right.
Okay, I hosted the high school mountain bike team, state champs, Division I state champs. We beat Golden and Boulder and a bunch of pretty cool. Hosted 100 people last night at my house, and actually I had this discussion with the guys. I'm like trying to go out for dinner and it's like off season, but it's hard to go out for dinner. Okay. So the locals there go out to dinner during the off season. Now there's 15,000 people
Sure, yeah. it's
in
big,
town.
yeah.
Okay. And there's full services. Like, you have a full hospital, you have full schools.
So-
It's largely driven by schools, things
So-
that
so
we
what
don't
we
have.
do when we get there, we could reach that kind of population level, don't you?
You know what?
Clark?
You're not going to be alive and I'm not going to be alive when that happens.
Well, but
And the main thing is to make the town successful today so that it can think about how it can grow.
but once we lose these business owned parcels to residential, 2 generations from now, they don't get them back.
No, that's not true. Because like, for instance, if the demand is strong enough, then Margaret, who has a cool house in the River District and it's B zone, she can scrape her place and turn it to commercial. I've actually seen that happen in areas in
But we
Florida.
have to be thinking further down the road. I mean, Clark, I was in Vail in 1969. I had no idea what it was going to be like. And you have to start thinking, Steamboat, we could become the next Steamboat. And having a commercial along the highway is critical to Steamboat. It's critical to Frisco. We didn't even, you talked about the main street in Frisco, but what about Highway 9? What about what goes on in Breckenridge?
Let's talk about Highway 9, okay? It was strip center hell, right? And we don't want strip center hell in Fraser.
Well,
I mean, that is the uniqueness of what we have. By me saying there aren't going to be no big boxes on Meyer Lot 1 and 2, that's avoiding. And I had a really good friend that moved from Aspen to Silverthorne and he's at Alpine. He's still at Alpine Bank 30 years later. He's kind of the same job like me. But he was in Silverthorne at Alpine Bank for a long time. He's like, Clark, I can't believe I moved over here from Aspen. This was like 15 years ago. Fast forward, Highway 9 in Silverthorne coming from Kremling has literally been transformed from what I would characterize. I don't know if y'all have been over there, but you should go look at it. Strip center hell.
Yeah.
Okay. Another great one to look at, and not dictated by the town, but driven by a very, creative couple is Buena Vista, South Main. Okay. That doesn't force commercial. It rather, kind of provides for it in a fashion. And what it did, it actually remade their main street. Like their whole main street now is actually pretty cool. I was over there for a mountain bike race about 3 weeks ago. It's pretty fabulous. All driven by a really cool, hotel that they did in the Surf Park along the river, but it's cool.
But Buena Vista did that neighborhood of mixed residential and commercial too over on the river, right?
That's what I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
called South Main.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it was a couple. It's not a couple. It's a brother sister.
Yeah.
That did that, and it was driven largely by the Surf Hotel and then all that River Park stuff that they did. But similarly, like I was over there for a long weekend and talking to the business owners, etc. Like, yeah, it's busy like now and during the summer, winter, like ghost town.
Yeah.
Right. But it encouraged development on their main street. And I think what we need to do is we need to be setting examples of high quality experiences that work. Like, I mean, credit Nathan and Vicious Cycle. I mean, it seems like there's cars there and it's busy and steady all the time. I will tell you, and I think he will support this, that it's largely driven by the residential that we built around it. It's like the neighborhood bar. I can walk down there and I might run into Brian or I might run into another neighbor. It is driven by that. And that gets to the heart of what I wanted to talk about is we today, you're worried about space. I'm not worried about space. And we have, in other words, I think you need to not do anything with respect to this B zone area. There's only, I think, maybe 3 or 4 parcels. I mean, think about it, like the Summerall parcel, the OVR 5 parcels next to your house, Brian. I mean, what commercial could you possibly put there that would be viable that's surrounded by residential? It's B zone. Okay. Like I remember Steve used to talk about putting a pot shop there. That was his big thing. Somebody's going to put in a marijuana shop here. And I'm like, that's about the only thing that would work with somebody having to drive to back then. But it was like fallacy. It's going to be all residential. We know that. The town's seeing multiple plans on what we're going to do there. And it only fits because it's surrounded by residential. That in turn will help Nathan and Vicious Cycle, and it'll help Parks at the coffee shop. and all the other little retail businesses that are right there that
It's
they
on
walk to.
Highway 40, so it's, would be perfect for residential and.
Well,
we
but I
also-
think that's the core question. Is frontage, that was gonna be one of my questions for Alan, is frontage defined as Highway 40 frontage?
Well, that's a big part of it, but also as close to Highway 40 as we can get.
Okay, but I mean, it's gotta be,
Close to other commercial.
there's
lots.
gotta still be
Yeah.
demand. You can't like fabricate demand. Okay, and if demand's there, private sector guys like me will come in and make hay with the demand. If the demand doesn't exist, you've got to somehow nurse it along to get some kind of prompt like a surf hotel to cause it to happen. I mean, without that, I mean, Buena Vista, even Meredith, my wife, was like, this is like a different place than it was the last time we were there. And it is. It's still very small, but it's very different. And I think the predominant thing that is kind of missed over and over again, and I really think that the town is hyper focused on its river district and the St. Louis Landing and that whole corridor. And frankly, it doesn't look great. I agree with that. And I mean, there's lots of issues there. The trailer parks are kind of going away. They probably could have gone away faster if Greg and Kevin's projects could move along a little smoother and faster, but
But Clark, that's a perfect example. When that first went up for sale, we had several buyers that came forward that wanted to put houses down there along the river. And that district would have been lost.
yeah, but
And that's-
okay, Andy, let's
so-
talk about that.
yeah.
Here's where I think you all made a critical mistake in your river district and your design guidelines. And getting back to my point about not studying and not opining, if you have an opinion, as to how things should be done. Greg and Kevin built residential right on the river.
Yeah.
And where's their commercial on the
building,
street?
yeah.
I thought we were creating a river walk with commercial. Like, I mean, I go to Taco Cabo almost every Saturday morning and have a breakfast burrito on the Yampa River,
Yeah.
right? And hang out with Kent and, I mean, that experience is what I thought you were trying to create. Okay. For whatever reason, okay, your consultants didn't get that message. Your staff didn't get that message.
And we got
And then when it happened, I remember sitting here and everybody's like, what do you mean the commercial's not on the river? Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, guys, this is the kind of stuff I eat, live, and breathe this. Y'all are volunteers advising, but I literally study these towns. I study how they work. I live in these towns. I've raised my kids in these towns. And it's just
But there-
like a
another-
lot of things happen that are so frustrating in
Another
this
idea,
community.
another idea, change in direction here would be to look at our business zone and do some rezoning. Would that make some more sense? Because,
Well, but-
as Peggy said, close to 40, I mean, it seems like this may be the right time to really look at the business zone and decide if we need to, and talk to property owners, look at the market conditions, think about the future. This through the town master plan that we're working on right now. Is this the time that we need to look at our business zone?
Well, here's my kind of thoughts on that. I'm going to jump down.
Sorry to keep interrupting.
No,
Just-
I appreciate the
Yeah.
dialogue and
Yeah.
just bear with me because I'm going to kind of bounce around on my notes that I just kind of wrote to myself. Rendezvous has 60,000 square feet of commercial, okay, in their density. They have 130 lodging units. They're building roughly
I think
100.
they only have 20,000 is what I just.
No, they have 60,000. And I know this for sure because I was actually just working on something for the water plan and it was part of our partition agreement and I was deep into densities and I've been on with Jeff Sheet. So they have 60,000 square feet of commercial. They built the bank building and that's it, right? Which doesn't generate sales tax for the town, but meets kind of commercial demand. They've got the hotel lodge that should generate good sales tax and lodging tax for the town. And that's all. Those guys are great. John and Grant are awesome. I think that's going to be a fabulous, successful project. I think 102 units. So, theoretically they'll have 28 units left. Okay. So that's on the east side of 40 down on the south end of town, next to me. Grand Park has 360,000 square feet of density. And Garrett, correct me if I'm off a little bit, but it's a lot. So it could be plus or minus, but it's a lot. And we have, not including the Rendezvous lodging, we have, I think it was 1456 in the original PDD. I think we have 1396. So we have 1396 lodge units. And I highly doubt all of that. I know the commercial, unless something dramatically changes, does not get built to that level. Okay, because I don't have anybody contacting us now about the 40 that we have built. And that doesn't include like the bowling alley theater, which was on a different lot, that's separate, but you do take out my office. The rec center doesn't count against that. So that's more square footage that's not in that 360. But I mean, generally speaking, today we have taking out Market Street, taking out the hospital and taking out my office, 300,000 square feet ballpark that we could still, be building. And there's land to do it on. So, I mean, you guys are focused on land availability. We're having fights over where I put open space and my private open space. So, I mean, think about how contradictory some of these discussions are. It's very frustrating when you're in my shoes. If there were demand for that commercial, I can promise you it would all be built. And y'all heard me the other night with the ones that are on the board that, I made a personal decision, bad decision, and move forward with the Market Street buildings when my very intelligent, very smart partner was going, Clark, I would rather not do this. And for me, it was emotional. It was an emotional decision. I find when you make emotional decisions in business, they generally don't work. But I was tired of looking at the gravel lots and wanted to go fulfill at least a part of this idea that we had. And maybe I'll be wrong, and one day it'll be the surf hotel that was the impetus to like push it all along. Well, we thought the rec center would help, and then we thought the bowling alley would help. And I think those things have helped make Fraser more attractive. Like one thing I heard last night at the party was, I can't believe we don't have a good rec center in Steamboat, right? This was from people there. We have a better rec center than basically most of the towns, except maybe some of the front range ones that you studied. I mean, we do have some really great facilities here, but yet we still don't have that commercial demand. And I think what I'm going to kind of leave you with, because I could go on all night long about this particular subject, it's population. And the core difference in what he studied in our little town is full-time population. And how do you get a larger full-time population? Okay. And I know every one of our businesses struggle to get by. They own their jobs. Okay. They're not killing it. They are literally making wages, but they're their own boss. And I know a lot of them really like that, but they struggle. And I know that because I own businesses and people go, oh, those are great. They're not killing it. Okay. They're getting by. And I think until we see businesses flourish, the demand's just not there for more business. So it begs the question, how do we garner more sales tax?
Right, which I think I agree with you totally that we need to focus on more full-time residents. I think they're right over the hill. They'd love to live here. If there was some commercial and some things that I talk to people and like, why would I move up here? There's nothing to do. Well, I said, what do you want to do? I want to shop. I want to go out to dinner. So those people want to be here. And you've got lots of land. You've got 300 acres in Byers Peak Ranch. It's flat, easy build. Could be really easy if you brought it into the town. We'd have an expedited approval process. So
She's never going to give that up, Amy.
I'm not going to give it up.
Me neither.
But there is a lot of acreage over there, and you could fill that up, and we could have a new school. We could have sales tax revenue. We could have people eating and shopping, and everybody be happy, including you. So
Well,
let's
I
work
mean,
together.
I think those are great dreams, and I think we should work together. But at the end of the day, to garner the capital and to get the investment, we've got to have more robust performance by current businesses, because that's what people look at. And those people are happy to share, right? When somebody calls and is like, oh, I'm thinking about doing another restaurant or doing a new restaurant.
The chicken and the ski shop conundrum.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like, listen, if it weren't for the ski rental business, I wouldn't still be in the ski shop business.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think we have the biggest ski retail shop in town, including Winter Park. Maybe the ski area is maybe a little bigger, but I mean, we have an enormous amount of retail, and I wish I didn't. And I think if you're truly worried about sales tax, you have to look at the growth of, the state passed a law that if if online sales are sold into an area, then those have to pay sales tax. So the one place that was up in your sales tax report last week was
Online sales.
online sales,
Yeah.
17% increase. Guys, that's not going away.
Yeah.
Okay, I just, the thing
It's
that
not
Amazon
gonna
did
go away, but you know-
2.3 billion packages.
People who come here think this is a third world country because they can't believe that we don't have any services. And we all have lived here long enough and we've evolved and we think Amazon's the greatest thing that ever happened because we're got used to
And
driving to
Murdochs.
Denver.
Don't leave out Murdochs.
So,
Listen,
yeah.
I don't go, I just had somebody who's like, hey, why don't you come down to Denver and go out to happy hour? This is like, guys, I basically avoid Denver like the plague. I like my small town mountain living and, you know, I only go there if I absolutely have to. I have no desire to be down there. And I truly feel that way. You, like what you're talking about are the social cultural weaknesses of Winter Park Fraser that have existed and were far greater before I started our development. They were far greater. I was instrumental and helped amongst a number of other people that were instrumental to help bring the rec center along that had failed 2 times before. The bowling alley theater was, you know, I made 0 on that, right? The medical center, another bucket list of mine. Okay. I have families with kids that have left when their kids got out of 5th grade because we don't have a 6 through 12 school right here.
That
So you
takes-
want to know when the predominant differences?
Takes
Like we-
population, yeah.
Crested Butte, Telluride. I have a good, very good personal friend living in Telluride that moved there full time. That was a ski bum with me years ago. Aspen, Basalt, frankly, even Vale. The big difference is schools. You know what his study doesn't talk about? All those towns that he just referenced, almost every single one of them, with the exception of Breckenridge and Silverthorne, have schools in their backyard.
Yeah,
And
but
I've heard
that's-
you,
but
Peggy,
that's-
so many times talk about Crested Butte.
But that's, Clark, that's the school questions.
Okay, but it's not Andy.
Too.
It's
It's a
it's
question
an
of population too.
Okay, but we're
Yeah.
talking economic development
Yeah.
and sales tax.
Yeah,
It is a direct correlation,
sure.
okay? And
But you
this
got one school
town,
of 300, we can't do
yeah,
2 of
but you,
150.
let me just tell you something.
So,
The East Grand School District
yeah,
is not going to come put a school in Fraser Winter Park without Fraser and the town of Winter Park pressing for that school.
sure.
They're not.
But not with the
okay.
population we have today either. And that's.
Well,
what we're
that's
trying to
not,
plan
that's
ahead,
just,
so.
okay, but
anyway.
you're putting your school hat on, because I know your dad was the superintendent or principal years ago,
But in
but
this
let
private
me,
schools,
you know, let me tell you what I
Putting-
know. I grew up and I graduated in a school of 56 in my grade.
Yeah.
Okay, Crested Butte has like 55. Telluride, I think, is just a hair over 60.
Okay,
I mean, these schools are like Kremlings. Kremling can have a school and we can't.
let's come back to the
Okay,
business, yeah.
but I mean, this is about sales tax. And
Yeah.
so we're talking about core question, how do you get a more robust full-time population? And I go and I will go for this next Friday night is this coming Friday night is the last home football game, I think, in Steamboat. I go to these home high school football games. Guys, I think I'm like back in high school in Texas. I mean, oh my gosh, you go to a game in Granby and there's nobody in the stands. The entire town is at these football games,
Yeah.
right? And it's in the center of town. And you literally can walk, 2 blocks to Main Street. What you have is a younger population with kids that can spend money that are raising their kids in these towns. And I'm a poster child for what happens when your wife says, I'm not doing junior high in Granby,
Yeah,
25 miles away. And that's not a knock on the school. I think the school is
16.
great.
16, 16 miles away.
Okay. But
Whatever.
regardless, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't live in small town America for your kids to go. And so that is the last item on my bucket list, which you all know I tried very hard to get, but I truly believe, and I can cite several Cousins Meadow homeowners that all raised their kids here until 5th grade, still own their homes and are in Denver, at
Yeah.
schools in Denver with their kids.
Okay,
And that is a loss though, Andy, of really a 365-day spender to maybe a weekend a month.
Yeah.
And they'll stop at Whole Foods coming up and not even hit our Safeway. So there's 2 key components I think we need to focus on to really help with the economic development. And it's not a lack of land. Okay, because I mean, frankly, let's say the demand existed, Peggy, and we have all that land that you were just citing. You just go and change the zoning on some of that land. If the demand were really there, I'd be in here with zoning changes saying, guys, I don't need residential, I need lodging and I need commercial.
So let's.
That's not the case.
Let's come back to the zoning question then. That would be a better way to approach this, it sounds like.
Well, and I don't
that's part
think
of our
it's,
master plan
yeah, but I mean,
process here,
it's,
so-
we don't, I guess my point is, there's not an emergency. You should not be doing moratoriums. Instead, you should be, I'm focused on what I can fix and where there is demand, which is housing inventory. And I've got really a three-pronged, I mean, we've got the housing we're building that's for sale, which, you know, Peggy, we'd love you to sell a home someday for us. And that's a more expensive, nicer, you know, very customized homes. We've got our apartment product that we're now going hard and heavy on. That's a whole nother component of our portfolio. Hallelujah, that's finally going. The low income piece was great, but the rest of the stuff that we're doing is free market. But again, it's inventory driven. And it's great units. And I think where we've run our rents, you're going to find that it's what everybody classifies as middle income, right? My rents are modeled at what y'all rent. Your rents are actually, mine are actually lower than what yours are now, but I don't have a deed restriction on it, right? But I'm building it with private investment. I have private bank financing on it, and that's what it takes. But I don't have rents that are even close to what some of the people are being charged today here, okay? And Andy, what that's geared towards addressing the employee issue,
Sure.
okay? And I firsthand know the employee issue very well. So I feel like if we can get housing inventory that starts to address even that transient, like a lot of people don't necessarily need to or want to buy their homes. They don't want to take that step or have that responsibility. And maybe they just want to rent. And when we are a transient community, particularly for the service worker industry, and a lot of the really younger kids are going to come here and be here 2 or 3 years and maybe move on, et cetera. So I think first step is housing. And an ideal spot for the housing is Meyer Lot 1, and it was almost all housing when it was Forest Meadow Solar when I bought it.
Oh, it was gonna be his pop-up sewer plant. Remember
It
that?
was what?
Yeah.
No, that was on a piece across the street, Peggy. That's on, that's actually on Meyer Lot 2.
Oh, well,
And
I get
that-
confused with Meyer
That
Lot.
still, that actually is still in the books because
Well,
we have to
let's
keep
leave those
that.
scary stories
have
for
to keep
Halloween,
that.
right? It's just a week away. So.
But here's a hard thing. I would need, that's commercial, by the way, the sewer plant. And I would need employees to be able to run the sewer plant. So we need housing first to address the employee issue. But those employees, and I like them back when I was a ski bum, well, I went out every night, spent my paycheck. You know, I lived right in town, and y'all have heard me say more times than I can count, I want every employee in our town to be able to ride their bike or walk to work.
Yeah.
I don't want them going on a bus and going to Granby. I don't want to be paying for a bus going to Granby, oh, by the way, or subsidizing one, or hot sulfur, or, I mean, when you look at the evolution of ski towns, just since I lived in Colorado, just since the early 90s, literally the migration down valley is massive, except in our valley. Okay, and why is that? Because we still have all this land. We are missing a lot of those social cultural elements. But I mean, Telluride, their workforce lives in Montrose, right? Crested Butte lives in
Gunnison.
Gunnison.
Yeah.
I mean, you go down through all of them. I stayed in Basalt this last weekend for the state mountain bike races at a friend's house that used to live in Aspen, right? It's Basalt, Carbondale, heck, they're all the way down to Gypsum and Rifle. And same thing with Vail. Vail's at Gypsum and Rifle. We can avoid that and have this critical mass that is getting paid to do their jobs and then going out and creating, by the way, that social element that you're talking about. That's what it takes to create it. Then they're helping to sustain the breweries and the bars and the restaurants. That's what has to happen. But you can't force someone to go do commercial. Okay, this land has sat.
Okay.
Forcing anybody to do anything.
no,
We're
but you
just
are,
trying to
because
protect
okay,
the opportunity
you're
for
not.
future use.
But it discourages investment in the community. And
You've got
investment in
enough
the community.
Land that you can develop.
Peggy, if we can put all the commercial the town could ever handle down at the village at Grand Park. Okay, there's no demand. We have to solve for the problem. And what you want is you want really nice restaurants to go to. And you want to have nice plays to go to or music events to go to. I get it. I understand it, right? I don't know that I can ever get my wife to move back here. Okay, but I'm not leaving here. I'd rather be here, frankly. I think we have the best recreation there is, period, in the state of Colorado. And I think we're sorely lacking on social cultural elements. But nobody, and I mean, even Bob Vance has tried to do this kind of stuff. The demand is not there because the population's not there.
Okay.
So trying to change zoning, hang on, let me change zoning to force someone to forego putting residential where they otherwise would because they want commercial on the bottom floor, you're going to end up with that land sitting empty for another 50 or 100 years, right? And that's not good for our town.
Okay.
It's not good for employment. Okay. So I'm going to leave two key components. If you want commercial demand, you got to focus on having housing and diverse housing. And we are doing a lesser expense. I call it an apartment style condominium that we are going to sell. We're going to have for rent and for sale product. That's at a lesser price point than our very custom condominiums. And again, that allows those people that want to commit and be here longer at a lower price point because it's about all we can do. I had micro cottages, 123 on 12 acres. It was awesome. Took me 6 years to get approved by the county, got killed by the county. It's in a lawsuit currently. And it was at Byers Peak Ranch, Peggy. And that was exactly the goal. If I had that product today, oh my gosh, it would be flying. It was beautiful. It would have been cool. And it would have been putting a lot of people right here where they can walk to the brewery here.
We can, you know,
Oh, we could put it in the town.
we could.
Yeah.
put
Yeah,
it in
but
the
I
town.
don't know what kind of zoning we'd put on it. I'd be afraid y'all to change it and require me to make it all commercial. So,
Okay.
but the long and the short, guys, is I really think you're going down the wrong path. It's a little misguided and it neglects what is already approved to happen in the town. That is strict commercial and lodging zoning, particularly when you factor in Rendezvous and Grand Park. And what you're doing is not helpful to drawing investment or creating employment, et cetera. So let's focus on the two key issues. And the second one, let's get 6 through 12 schools here. Okay, I know Andy disagrees with that, but I
No,
know
I'm
some
just-
people agree.
That's another question. So
Okay,
let's
but-
focus on this one.
Okay,
So,
but I
yeah,
mean,
appreciate
that
it.
will, Andy, that will,
I-
okay, just from the sales tax perspective, that will drive sales
No.
tax like you can't believe.
Okay.
And one reason Granby will fight it is because they know the sales tax that brings to their town every
Okay.
day with parents
Okay.
delivering kids to school.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, sir, when you come to the lectern, just say your name. if you
Yeah.
would, Please.
Ryan Sharp.
Helps with the
And I'll tell you what I told the Grand County Rec Board, that I'm here to, in the spirit of Johnny Cash, to represent the poor and the beaten down, living in the hopeless, hungry side of
So,
town.
Brian, I'm sorry, we're talking about the
Right.
zoning, okay, if we could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
well, it's getting late and I'm just trying to keep this moving along, so.
Well, I need to get
we're not
time
the
too.
rec board.
Just because I don't have millions of dollars doesn't mean I don't have a right to have equal time here. I actually think I was involved in a lot of the planning down in Punta Gorda, which is a very similar sized town. I stood in front of 6,000 people at a convention center, and I heard comments like, "Well, this is a resort community. You know, we want art centers. We want all this." And I said in front of 6,000 people, I said, somebody has to flip your damn burgers. Somebody has to work. There's no such thing as a resort community of all wealthy people, because somebody, my wife, has to work at the stores. Somebody has to work and flip the burgers. Somebody has to, my pastor, he's a janitor part-time. So I agree. I think there's a lot of what Peggy said is exactly right. There's a lot of what Clark says is exactly right. We can't go out to eat. We go to Wendy's on Sunday morning and get their 2 for $3 meal, and that's it. We can't eat anywhere else. There's nowhere else in this town we can afford to eat. So at the same time, housing's an issue. So you have to have a place to live, but you've also got to have a place you can actually go out and eat. We go to Granby. You talk about Safeway. Safeway's a joke. We go to Granby to City Market to buy food, and believe me, we don't buy meat. I haven't had meat ever since I got here. I can't afford it. I think he's got a good plan. Uh, they tried to work this out in Punta Gorda down there where, the people for housing was fighting over downtown land, which was 10 times less square foot than what you guys got. The people for commercial were fighting over, let's make it all commercial. What they ended up doing, which is what they should have, what all counties I think should do, is have the residential option, mixed use option, and allow people to live in the basement or on the second floor. I think that solves a lot of your issue right there. But I agree with Peggy and I agree with Clark both. We've got to have, and I know nobody likes to talk about Taco Bell and Walmart, but God damn it, we need it. We need it to survive.
Yeah.
We can't survive on Wendy's and then try to get by with one. We go to City Market and we go to Wendy's. That's it.
Yeah.
And yet we're working here. I know every resident that works over, or every person that works over there at the ski lodge. None of them, most of them don't even have transportation. They ride their bikes to work. And certainly they don't go out to eat. So, you talk about businesses, if you don't allow development and you don't allow Walmart, you don't allow these places, you're not going to have anybody that actually will flip the burgers for the wealthy. It takes both. There's no such thing as just a retirement community. And I proved this down in Punta Gorda. They had this mentality. And 2 years after I made that speech, all the restaurants were gone. You go to Chili's, they had a nice steak and shake. You go there and there's a lock on the door. It's not because there's a problem with the building. It's because nobody could work there. The library closed down because they couldn't afford to. So
I'm sorry, could you just, make your point? And we're trying to keep this thing moving along. We're talking about this specific zoning question, and it's interesting the history down there, but
well, and as far as your zoning map, again, I agree with Clark. You got plenty of land here. It's just you got a bunch of environmentalists that are running this thing that are afraid the bears and afraid all this stuff's going to get killed. They had a moose over there at the right there at Trails End Mercantile. Somebody's going to get killed, and because we can't, take care of wildlife responsibly, and actually remove the moose. Again, I think there's too many environmentalists that are afraid the mountain scenes are going to be tore up here. And there's plenty of land for housing. There's plenty of land for commercial. So I think you both need to increase, I see open space up there on the map. Hell, that's plenty of room there to put a Walmart.
Okay.
Plenty of room to put housing.
Thank you. I appreciate your input. Thanks.
Why do I only get 5 minutes and he gets 30? Because I don't have $1 million fucking dollars.
Thanks, Brian. Any other input?
And I pay your taxes.
Thank you, sir.
And I flip your burgers and serve you guys while you're arguing over land.
Your name and where you live, please.
Will McDonald. I live in Winter Park in Fraser.
Okay,
I'll be quick.
thank you.
I was just listening online and I was just concerned how I keep hearing the idea of a school getting shut down based on our population. And when we don't have the population because we don't have the school.
Chicken
And this is
egg conundrum.
It's not
Yeah.
chicken or the egg. There's a clear difference between every other mountain town that Clark was naming. Our ratio of housing to population is a fraction of every other ski town, and it's because we don't have a school. And that is the domino effect that is going to generate everything else that you guys are talking about with the zoning and the sales tax. And that is the catalyst that needs to happen for everything else to happen that we're talking about here. And it is absolutely crucial. I've studied this my entire life. It is absolutely essential if you want to develop this community to start with the school, and then
Okay.
everything else will fall into place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Will.
Parnell has his hand up.
All right, thanks, Andy. Hey, I just wanted to say, Clark hit on a lot of the stuff I had, so I won't regurgitate what he said. Brian, the gentleman that spoke after him, I feel your pain. Sometimes you don't get the time you want, but that's what happens. However, Peggy, I agree with you. The future is unknown, and taxes are how the town survives. And waiting for the comprehensive plan is not an emergency. If the need for more taxes is the town's goal, then you should let Grand Park build all the development they can north of the rec center and get out of the way of all other developers and understand the need for taxes is more important than the private open space near the highway. And one other thing, Peggy, the guy sitting next to you that's leading this town meeting, he's the reason Byers Peak Ranch is not in the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Parnell. Okay, and so Gregory Beckler has his hand up.
Hey guys, sorry I'm joining a little bit late and missed a lot of the conversation. So if I say anything that you guys already talked about, forgive me. But I saw the agenda and hopped on when I could. I think the town should really think hard about adding additional commercial restrictions right now anywhere. The area we develop in is the Riverwalk Mixed Use District, which has a mandatory commercial requirement. And we've been building that. Our first development on Highway 40, we built it before the requirement was in place. Our current development at Strome, we've built that required retail. And I have, luckily, buyers in that retail for a 750 square foot bakery that will not have a sidewalk in front of them, may have utilities in front of them only because what we've done. And so I think to say that you're going to require commercial anywhere else in the town where infrastructure is not there, sidewalks aren't there, there's a big responsibility of the town to build out this infrastructure to require this sort of infill development that, to be honest, building in downtown is not infill development right now. It's greenscape. You got to bring infrastructure. It absolutely does not make financial sense. And so we can make sense of it in the Riverwalk district because of density bonuses and whatnot. But I mean, outside of what Clark's trying to do, I don't know what you guys discussed or what he has coming down the pike, but anyone trying to redevelop a lot in the business district on a single family home lot and require commercial, zero chance they can make it pencil. And that's just my opinion. I do think there's a massive need for a vibrant commercial district. I think we have that with the Riverwalk district, and I think we can build to that because of the density on top of it. But to require private developers, forget me, forget Clark, forget anyone who's doing anything bigger, someone to develop a 10,000 square foot lot with commercial with no sidewalk in front of them, have them upgrade utilities, build a sidewalk, build infrastructure to have a real retail business. I just don't see that happening. So, I don't know what caused this moratorium to come to the board, and I apologize if I missed a lot of the conversation earlier tonight, but I don't see how requiring commercial throughout the business district when half of it's residential homes right now makes any sense. So if I missed something, forgive me, but just from jumping in late, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, sir. We have a hand up from Adriana Scott.
Hi, this is Mike Scott right now. Adrian's here with me. Our question, when Margaret was asking for the picture of the zoning areas and her area up there close to St. Louis Landing, Sun River Townhomes, it showed that all in red as business. Is that zone business now? Because it didn't used to be business where the townhomes are at, and we own Sun River number 7.
I can verify and follow up with you separately if you'd like to maybe email me, but my understanding is I believe that area is currently zoned business.
Yeah, according to
Um,
our zoning map, we'd have to, I guess, dig into the property history to see if it was something else. And when
Yeah,
that-
look
Correct.
and see because they zoned it for the garages and the warm store, and we've owned it almost 30 years there. But Sun River Townhomes were not in the business. That was divided that plat, and if you look, the last plat does not include the townhome side of that.
Yeah, but so that residential use was allowed in business when it was built, and I don't believe there've been any major rezonings in this town for a long time.
It wasn't rezoned business until Ron Jones owned it. If you'll look at that plat, you'll see where that only included that and the garage units in the warm store.
Okay,
Which
well,
is
let's
now
have
our-
our town staff do some research on that, if that'd be okay, Mike.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other input? Some-
Brandon Coletti Jung with Grand Park. I heard Brian, and we all know this a lot, and really trying to start to work a lot with the town and really build bridges instead of, we don't want our history to be our future, right? And even in this hearing or meeting, Brian mentioned the citizens of this town really need housing. And then to make a move of Ordinance 527 to declare a state of emergency with imminent danger to public health because of an unmanageable influx of land use applications sends a very clear signal and flies in the face of what St. Louis Landing is, affordable housing, what we build and bring to the market, tons of housing. And if we're able to, for instance, the Mill River Apartments, which maybe one day we could get it back into the town, but 427 apartment buildings that come online immediately reduces it encourages competition and reduces housing across the board. So when looking at Ordinance 527 and how, I mean, where's Spring Hill Suites employees going to live? I mean, it's a big hotel, big operation. And going back to the point that's been pretty salient throughout the entire night is residential or homes first that then drive commercial. And doing things like Ordinance 527 to the citizens, it seems like a witch hunt and very directed. There's no other land use applications that have come in. And then to try and use a declaration of emergency and using police power to move this agenda forward, whatever that agenda is, I'm still confused as to, are we partners or not? Does the town and its citizens think that the market at Village Street, the Village Street Market is a good thing? Right? I mean, I would have loved to have seen that being completed 5 years ago. Developer would have loved to seen that completed 5 years ago. Cost a lot of money to get into these things, and it continues to happen. And really what we want to do is partner with you guys to get what the citizens are screaming at the top of their lungs, what they want and desperately need. So when Ordinance 527 comes up in public hearings and stuff like this, expect a lot of people to show up for it, because declaring a state of emergency around a rezoning deal to restrict the very needed housing is very convoluted and contradictory all in one little nice parcel. And Ordinance 527 really shows that, declaring a state of emergency to rezone, to get residential out of a B zone district on this, we just need to be really careful. And it's really our intent and drive to work closer with you guys and really build bridges, not let our past be our future. Thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I think it's an opportunity for the town to educate the public on how important sales tax is to this community. And if we develop everything residential, we won't have any sales tax. So it is a process. It's a dialogue that we're having now.
It's a planning process. Yeah.
And that's what we're starting. Today is day one. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think the community needs to understand that we don't run on property taxes.
Ordinance 527.
You have to start somewhere.
All it does is put it on pause.
Yep.
So that we can discuss it. That's all it does.
And more brings more
So-
steps because it brings it to the safe way.
Let's come back to the lectern, okay? So,
Well,
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So any more other board discussion? This is just a
A
discussion.
lot of good
item,
points
so-
have been made. There's a lot more that we need to discuss regarding all this stuff, and more discussions will happen. And so, thanks for everybody and all their input. No decisions are going to get made tonight. So,
Yeah. Okay,
yeah, it's an important topic, and it's good that we have concerned citizens.
yeah. Anything else? Okay, so any other business from the board? Okay. Any future agenda items? We've got a reminder, our next meeting is November 12th.
Mhm.
So that's the
Yep.
master, part of that agenda will be the master plan. So to discuss that.
Correct. Yeah, we'll bring the comprehensive plan
Yeah.
forward for review, discussion, and hopefully a recommendation of adoption. So.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
All right.
I